Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I am here with my new friend, Pearly Montagu. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Morning.
Morning.
Pleasure to be here.
And this is also like this is the first trial run of the, what am I going to call this? The new podcast space. But it is a loft in the house. So
it's beautiful.
Yeah, we have natural light. We've got trees.
Light streaming through. The sun is shining. So much to be grateful for.
So much. How was your morning?
Beautiful. I always try and anchor my mornings in the spirit of how you start your morning is how you start your day. So I did my gratitude list this morning. Mm-hmm. And then I did a 4-minute hack, courtesy of Zach Bush, which I love. It's such a great workout. And then just another small little mini workout, and then some tapping, which is really powerful for shifting you into the parasympathetic nervous system of just feeling very grounded and centered and calm. How was your morning?
It was good. Mine was, so I will often do morning hacks, as everybody that listens to this podcast knows. I typically would do red light. I would stand in front of a red light therapy panel.
Oh, wow.
And I might jump in the cold plunge.
Oh, wow.
And then lately I've been listening to guided audio tracks from any inspirational theater speaker you can even imagine.
Right.
Anything from like Martin Luther King to, I've listened to Zach before in the mornings, just somebody that is speaking, it feels like through a channel, and I'll just let the words roll over me, and however I'm, working with that is like, I say, it's like medicine in the morning.
Is the infrared thing you do, is that for your skin? You stand in front of a panel
that's one benefit, but the red light, it essentially moves through the dermis of the skin, and it helps to charge the red blood cells, so we get more potential for making higher energy. There is a side effect that because of the voltage or the charge of the light, that you do get better skin.
Yes. Yeah, I keep hearing about, I think the Ritual podcast, he was talking about that.
Yes.
Who I love that. The other thing I really love, which I often listen to in the shower, it's have you seen Denzel Washington's speech that he did for a big graduation of, I think it was quite a parent. And that one, it's the dream, and it's so good. Yes. And it's so inspiring of how he takes you on this journey of starting where he was doing interviews and he got kicked out of university and he was at his lowest of low, and then he goes through the point of going into a theater where he went for a job that he didn't get, and then he said, and I kept showing up and I kept preparing and I kept calling it in, having faith and trusting, and then life opened up, and obviously he had such a phenomenal journey. And then 20 years down the line, he was back on Broadway in the place that he failed at. And I find it so inspiring. And there are so many on YouTube of those wonderful things, but that's the one I always come back to.
I will intentionally pick that tomorrow morning. That speech it's been layered in to compilations that I've listened to.
Really?
So it's a very, it's really good. There's some,
nailed it.
Oh, he nailed it. There's some great Vince Lombardi. He's a very famous football coach, and just getting people to these level of peak performance in the morning. Other times it's just something like a different frequency tracks. There's an app I have called Newcom, and there's one that's like a primer. Do you know Tony Robbins?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Tony does a priming verbal like talk up, but it's layered underneath it is like a different frequency equation to get your brain into that peak state, that like really high intense gamma, and that's also incredibly powerful. You just got to be careful what you do with that energy, because you can take off like a rocket.
Yeah.
And
you need to stay grounded. The other one that I love is, have you seen the Steve Jobs one where I think it was at Harvard?
Yes.
And that one is really, and it's always the same story, like with you and with me, where it's those moments where people feel really broken, and then it ends up being the making of them. And him being kicked out of university, for those who haven't seen it, him being kicked out of university where he felt guilty because his parents, who didn't have a lot of financial means, were paying for this thing that he didn't connect to in terms of education. And then he ended up, because of dropping out, he ended up doing what ended up being birthed into Pixar, which ended up being one of his first billion-dollar entities. And it's always so lovely to stay anchored to these sort of inspirational figures who've created so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, I think that's a good opportunity to, I'd love to drop in,
Sure.
what was a time where you felt beautifully broken, or what was a time that was extremely hard for you in your life, which was a catalyst for change?
It's a big question. Yes, my 29th year was a really huge, I felt like my life was cracked open, and I had the experience of being um, in quite a serious accident, and I had a lot of injuries to my upper body, and I ended up in hospital, and I had just such a huge experience of a new reality and my body not working in the way that it used to, and just having this 7-year journey of really having to fight for my health and really having to mentally and physically rebuild, and just going through that journey of courage and faith, and keep showing up, and just rather like that wonderful book by Deepak Chopra, Quantum Healing, which is like, and Dr. Joseph Dispenza's work, it's like, just keep believing that every day you're going to get better and better. And it's been such a long journey with so many different iterations and I think also just going through the motions of not knowing the landscape, because when something happens to your health, there isn't a map of this is what you should do and this is how you get better, and you kind of have to figure it out for yourself. And I guess it was the first time I really understand what chronic pain means from an experiential, rather than when people just talk about it, and just really just being so humbled in that experience. And then also understanding that whilst I totally honor Western medicine, and it was amazing to me at the beginning, especially when I was in hospital, and all the scans and stuff I had to have after that. But after that, I actually, for the first time, understood that Western medicine really just deals with the symptoms and not the cause, and starting to see these doctors that fundamentally weren't helping me, and just going through that journey of feeling quite disconnected from my body and quite isolated and quite alone, and not having people who were advocates for me, and just really having to figure out my own landscape, and realizing I'm in a lot of pain every day when I wake up, and I'm 29, and I really want to be happy and healthy. And I remember this working with this amazing Japanese healer who had this thing which has always stayed with me, which he said, health is our greatest gift, but we only understand its true value when it's gone. And just going back to just many different iterations of when I sort of left Western medicine to one side, and then started to see various different twists and turns, being taken to a Greek island, which ended up being rather like Austin, where we are now, a sort of mecca for healers. And actually, life brought me everywhere where I needed to sort of, as the next layer of the next iteration. I feel like also, if you're open to it, life will always bring you what you need. It's not necessarily always what you want. And often those painful things can be such an opportunity to evolve, but you kind of have to meet those challenges with grace and equanimity, and just kind of roll with the waves. Yeah, going to Corfu, this Greek island, and there I found bioresonance, cranial sacral, reflexology, acupuncture, energy work, also plant medicines, which was deeply, just helped my body so much to let go of injuries that I'd been holding. So it's just been an iteration, and to where I am now, which has been kind of quite an extraordinary wild journey of, since learning how to heal my own body, of actually realize, and then being inspired to train in different modalities that had really helped me in such a meaningful way. And I feel like what really ultimately nourishes the soul is when we give back and we serve. And then once I had trained in a few of these different modalities, started to use them with people, and just realizing actually I'm pretty intuitive with the body. And then fast forwards to where I am now, which is through everything I've been through, this quite extraordinary and unique gift coming forward of being able to see physical and emotional pain in very vivid colors and structures in the body, and having the privilege of being able to work with people who have minor to major illnesses, and really having some quite extraordinary results and spontaneous remissions, which is sort of a medical word for a lingo, medical lingo for a miracle of people who come to me and they have 4 years of knee pain and then it's gone in a session, or 14 years of back pain. Or I had this extraordinary experience last week actually working with a neurological immune disease, and one of the symptoms was something that happened in this child's throat. And actually, it was also online, but it wasn't just online. Like I was able to just drop into the field. They weren't sitting there on Zoom, which is also something I've realized they've had the capacity to do, which from what I understand is quite unusual. But yeah, the symptom they've had for a year, it's actually, the mom just told me that it's gone. For me, it's like, I feel like I have so many dream jobs, and then also now starting to work with corporations and legal cases of, in the same essence of, you're just working with the energetic landscape around business deals, around relationships, and around legal cases, which is so much fundamentally, it's around relationships that comes into the vortex of like maybe a family constellation, or maybe it's a corporate deal, and just removing what I can see very clearly within the energetic landscape to help remove successes. So it's been a deeply humbling journey with a lot of pain, but I'm very grateful for my experience.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I want to honor the 7 years in which you were in pain. And I know I can only, from my own experience, I can say I understand what it's like to hold it for that long.
Yeah.
And it becomes something that has its own life force and power and drive. I'm so happy that you're in Austin, Texas with me, in a very different place, and now giving back. So I celebrate you.
Thank you. And I also really honor you and your journey. It's very inspirational how you've managed to turn your pain into so much purpose and touching people's lives individually and communities in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
It's really something.
Yeah. I can't imagine a better way to spend my life.
I hope.
Yeah, I can't imagine a better way to spend my life. There's so much to unpack from what you said. I want to go back a little bit. When you mentioned your chronic pain and your accident and your time in hospital, were you given a diagnosis per se for the persistent pain?
No, and it actually took me years to understand my injuries, and then only what I didn't realize had happened. It was actually almost like PTSD now from understanding that. And also the biggest impact, because I had my face and my legs were very cut and bruised, but the biggest injury was actually to my nervous system, which was on fight or flight mode ever since. So I would have the experience of things like, I knew you were coming around the corner, but even when you come around the corner, I just get the biggest fright, because my body was constantly like, when are we going to get hit again? And so and only more recently with the tapping, it's just like more and more layers of like allowing the body to be more still and more grounded and slow down and just really support my nervous system. Yeah. So it's been, so I didn't have a diagnosis, and I kind of had to work it out for myself.
There's so many ideas running through my head. I'm wondering if when we're done with our interview, you have to like run away. There's like so many things, like gadgets and tools I want to like use on you downstairs. I mean, I would join with you and say probably the universal truth across this idea of labeling, what the imbalance is within the human spirit of the physical body, is that many times the diagnosis can create a limitation on our path towards healing.
Absolutely.
And for me, with access to so much information and all the testing and the diagnostic work, and it was letting go of a lot of those things and really coming back to the inner knowing and the ability to be like, is this a yes? Is this a no? What does that feel like? And kind of developing that language. And I see this across the space. We get really attached to the diagnosis or the label, and the human body. We're like these magical quantum computers that are connected with everything. When we're going to unpack this for everybody listening, just like, wait, she works with people over Zoom and she's healing over Zoom.
And also when they're not sitting on Zoom, there's some very busy CEOs that I work with. When they're in pain, they'll just message me and drop into the field and move stuff around.
Now there's, and I know this because there is even within the U.S. government, there's people who've scientifically examined non-local healings, radical remission. Mm-hmm. We talk about radical remission, which is a book about people with late stage cancers. And in an attempt to disprove this, the guy got to like case 300. He was like, oh my God, this is, it's real.
Right.
It's a real thing. I'm fascinated at your journey. When you started to explore different modalities, or rather when you found yourself out of your fishbowl and on this Greek island. What was that like to go into another realm and be just surrounded by different mindsets and different vocabulary of healers?
It's funny, I feel like just trusting the flow of life, and I had such clear signs that that's where I should go. And I actually, the reason I went there was because it was COVID lockdown, and I had gone home to my family on a farm in England, sort of riding my horse, and yeah, it was dreamy. And then after a while, we were all so mutually annoyed with each other. And then there was some work that I was doing, which was too much for my nervous system. And I actually started burning out and flying into rages and losing weight and not being able to sleep. And all of that is very far from how I normally operate. And then my reflexologist trainer actually said to me, I think your thyroid was out of whack. And she was the one who diagnosed it first. And then I realized my thyroid was overactive. Anyway, so my boyfriend at the time and my family, I just said, I'm going to Corfu, my Greek island. Like, I'm going to call you. Don't call me. I'm having a 3-month timeout. Like, so I went there, and then it was just this new journey of falling in love with the island, the community, and actually ending up buying a little ancient olive grove, which has its own private beach, where I'm now actually building a temple based on sacred geometry and symbolism, which is a place that I'll practice my healing and a place that people can come to heal. So that sort of all fell into my path. But yeah, and then just finding all these Osho sannyasins. It's a very vibrant spiritual community, but they lived in such a connected way, and the way that they aged, dancing and connection and meeting and movement and yoga, it was so inspiring to me. And obviously the polarities are always there, so there was things that also weren't great, but it was deeply inspiring of what it can look like to heal, because coming from Northern Europe, the old age process can be really unkind. And I saw that in my own family with my grandparents, just feeling very alone and very isolated. And it was, for me, it was deeply inspiring.
Yeah, incredible. Incredible. And to go into your work a little bit, or what that looks like, I should share with everybody listening and watching that we had an opportunity to drop in on Sunday. So it's been a few days now.
Yeah.
And I'd love to describe the process for me.
Please.
You know, I would say in the category of energetic work, or it reminded me of certain Reiki sessions and certain, goodness, even like gentle touch Reiki. But what you did for me was you created this incredible space in which nothing was prompted or cued. Really, it's you are working with different angels and different guides. And my experience was I was filled with so much joy and contentment, deep contentment, and having a time to reflect and journal a little bit. It was like a level of contentment where I felt like I needed nothing.
Yeah.
Because there's relaxed and there's sedated, and I'm like, well, I'm tired. I feel like I need to lay down. But my contentment was just incredible. And
I remember you also very kindly shared in terms of innocence and joy.
Yeah. I said, I could feel you in the session and being like this source of innocence and joy and curiosity and playfulness. It was very profound. And there was just so much, light, and my eyes were closed the majority of the time, I think 99.9% of the time. And I was getting these crazy visuals, especially because half is on my back and then I'm on my side. And while I'm on my back, everything is like oranges and yellows and bright lights, and there's these weird machine-like shapes moving through my visual field. And then when I turn on my side, it was like dark purples and blues, and it was like a mountain horizon. Very fascinating, and feeling different feelings in my feet, like again, like this extreme joy or love in my feet. I was like, why is it my feet? And then I'd feel it in my hands. Really, really fascinating. And definitely, from a biometric standpoint, I track my sleep. I track sleep latency, onset, heart rate variability, time between successive heartbeats. And I got a really amazing recovery score that night. Like it was 100 for the sleep score. Perfect. And then my recovery was like a 97. So it was like the body, and I didn't do anything special that day. The body was in a very resilient place of physical, trackable state of resiliency. And then I've been very tapped in emotionally. I will say it's like my ability to tap into what I'm feeling, specifically like empathy, and let some tears go for the last 2 days have been really like, really right on the surface, which feels good, yeah, to have access to all those things.
It's so beautiful to hear the feedback, because it's always deeply individual, and no session is the same, because I just follow the flow. And when I open the field, obviously we chat and check in before, but I have a vague sense, or sometimes I'll get visions of what it might look like, but I never know quite whether we're going to go left or right. And the intention is always to honor the soul that I'm with. And I think there's so much healing that can happen when you're witnessed and you have someone who's truly present with you. And I always try and hold people with the intention of just holding them, that sort of mother's love, that sort of nurturing, safe space where there, just so much care and love that can come through that.
Yeah. I'm very blessed to actually have that in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
From my partner, from the people that are that live around Michael, who lives on this property, this community that I engage in. Most people in this space who I spend time with offer that to me.
Beautiful.
That is not the norm. And this also came up in me writing until you had prompted me.
Right.
And reminded me, it's like, I'm holding you in a way that is similar to the mother's love, this unconditional love.
Yeah. Because I think also, sorry to interrupt you, but I think also with it reminds me of water, because I'm actually building a Watsu water temple, and a Watsu, it's a very specific water therapy, which is Japanese, and it's at 29 degrees, which is the same temperature that the womb is. And the essence of why it's so powerful in these extraordinary sessions that you can do in water Watsu therapy is because it's all about water. It takes you back to the womb, basically, but it's about water holding you unconditionally. And so it's about unconditional love. So it's about, doesn't matter what color you are, what size you are, like the water will always hold you, which for me, it just touches my heart more than anything. And it's also such a beautiful way of how you can work with babies whilst they're still in the mummy's tummies. So back home in Corfu on the Greek island, there's this phenomenal doula that it's really important to me to support her work. And a different way of, there's many ways to be a mother, and this is my way of being a mother. But just going back to the water, it's something that's just deeply meaningful to me.
Yeah, because there was water in the session. You had like a little tray.
Yeah, it's because water is an element, and it sounds so silly, but I only discovered it a few years ago when doing a ceremony. We had to go to this waterfall before and after to wash, and actually just really understanding water as an element which cleanses and clears. And I just hadn't got that memo until then.
Yeah,
learning all the time. All the time.
All the time.
Stay curious. Stay curious.
The waves keep coming.
Yeah, I think if you're open and also play with the power of prayer and this magical world that we live in, this infinite intelligence that sits behind our lives, and you can call in whatever you want, and you can dream whatever you want to dream, and as long as you can work hard and keep showing up, there's extraordinary things that you can do and achieve, is how I've lived my life. And I really have seen that again and again. Yeah.
Life can be really scary. I mean, I think sometimes if you allow yourself, especially I found, to stand in the role of the healer, where you're holding space, and when you're holding for other people and to see their pain, it can get pretty intense. And I'm always wondering, from your aspect, how do you keep yourself clean from what comes across in a session, or that you don't pick up into your energetic field, which is a real thing, I guess. For people listening that don't share this belief system, if you've ever been in a room and you have ever engaged with somebody who's just really low and dark and even negative and depressed and maybe manic, and you're not sure how, and it can stick with you for a little while. I just had this happen last weekend with a woman, and she's come at me a couple times on the phone, and in a really dark way, after I've overextended myself, and I still have to engage because of the agreement that we're in. And it's hard for me. Every text, every phone call, I have to do
protection prayers.
A little prayer, or I just
Protection
clear
prayers.
myself and I remind myself, Freddie, this is not about you. She's hurting at this time. Please show up with the highest and greatest good for her greatest possible outcome. Yeah.
And it's so often there's a couple of people that I mentor, and it's always when stuff's coming from someone else, especially within our own family constellations, it can be so emotionally charged. It's always so helpful to remember that what in someone's being unkind or mean or hurtful, it's their unkindness from their pain. So if you can try and meet that with compassion, and then that's a way you can sort of transmute. And also there's different protection prayers that you can do, which is in such a simple way of, in the spirit of where intention goes, energy flows. So just visualize yourself in a protective wall or of white light or whatever it is, in such a simple way. It's not complicated. And then when you go into a space or an interview or something that is quite triggering for you, it really does move the dial. But it's such a great question because it's so fundamental to me being able to keep showing up and serving people and helping them in a meaningful way. And I have a ton of protection things that I do, like with water to cleanse and clear and to use Palo Santo. And then I have very specific protection prayers. And then I use rose oil. And back home in Ibiza, the water is ultimate medicine for me. And so I swim in the sea a lot and always just setting my intentions to clear and cleanse. And so those are kind of most of the layers of things, but I keep building and building, and then I have the capacity to hold more and more and do more and more sessions, especially as there's a lot more demand that I've been lucky enough to sort of to navigate.
Yeah, incredible. That's so important. What's really interesting to me is I want to go back to this. I have a not a negative attachment, but I have when somebody says, oh, you can use prayer and you can use this. Yeah. Everybody has a different relationship with prayer or organized religion, or I find for some people it's how you use that word and
your intentions. I guess you can say you can set your intentions.
You could set your intentionality
from a place of gratitude, which is also neurolinguistic programming, or you can call it manifesting, or if you want to play the semantics game.
Yes. Well, I can tell you whatever you call it. What was we did one together at the end. We did a prayer.
Yeah. Was that the Ho'oponopono prayer?
No, we did that one, but then we did one of the saints.
It was Archangel Gabriel.
Archangel Gabriel.
Or Archangel Michael, the Archangel of protection. Archangel Gabriel is he's the angel of white light protection. So I work a lot with white light. So it's one of the prayers that I do when I open the space for someone. It's that I'm a channel of, as I'm working with them, I'm filling them with white light. And that's often what's mirrored back to me, because I don't talk through the sessions, but people often share that they're seeing a lot of white light. Yeah.
I'm always amazed when I can remove my attachment from it, how powerful it is as a practice. And like you said, it is semantics, but it's they're incredible lyrics or how the dialogue is laid out, that it really does change the programming in your mind, and it changes your awareness, what you're open to, what you're allowing within your body to be healed. Very powerful.
Yeah, but I think also in the way that it's our thoughts that create the reality and the filter of how we see the world, but it's also in such a simple essence of, if we have a session together and you are open-hearted as you were to the possibility that I was able to help you in such a simple way, I then am able to help you. But if I'm working with someone and it's never happened, then I also wouldn't do it, which is if I'm working with someone that does not feel that I could help them or that energy medicine works, then I totally respect where they are on that journey and honoring them. But it's also the body will follow that in the same way of quantum healing. If you feel like you're going to get sick, when you meet those people, when I see it, and everyone has a radio channel that they run on. People are always happy, or they're always joyful, or they're always stressed Erics, or they're always busy, or they're always chilled, and it's always, or they've always got problems. But actually, if you can change that channel.
Yes, you can change the channel.
Like your genes, it's like you can wake up every day and you can change your life today, and it doesn't require any money, by the way. And it's not. I always feel like people spend so much of their lives of, when I get my dream relationship, when I get my dream wedding, when I get divorced from this asshole, when I get my dream job, when I get out of this job, when I get and it's actually like, it's now. And all these things that are outside actually happiness comes from inside. I remember talking about with a friend, it's like we've been lied to that we have to buy all this stuff to help support the economy so that the world keeps going round of a diamond is forever. It's like if you love someone, it comes from inside, and that feeling of being held has nothing to do with a ring or a mortgage or a house with 2 cars. So it's like I feel like there's so much that's been lost of coming back to actually there's so much less that we need, and keep life simple and happiness and joy of how you wake up. Like, how do you wake up when you wake up in the morning? How do you feel? Like, I've woken up in the morning and been in relationships where I've been in, a beautiful home or a stately home or whatever back in England, and actually fundamentally it wasn't the right fit and I wasn't happy, and so that doesn't serve me, so I'm not going to stay. And just living in Ibiza in a beautiful little sort of temple space, and it's really small and sort of gorgeous and humble, and that's what brings me joy, and so that's what I'm anchoring to.
I'd be interested to have your insight. I mean, I would say that for a degree, I don't own this home. I rent. I rent a car. I don't own a lot of stuff. I have a lot of wellness equipment because that's my addiction. But I would be really interested to have your take on, has your experience being in chronic pain and having an accident and having all those things taken away, has that helped you with what you find as a priority, what your physical needs are on this journey?
I guess it's kept me very grounded in not taking my health for granted. So not every day, but a lot of the days, one of my gratitudes is that I'm grateful for my health, grateful to come from a loving family. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I guess from really, and I'm still on that journey, and I think it will be a lifetime of having to do. I was quite disheartened recently, and I was chatting to a doctor who was helping me, but even now, 7 years down the line, still having to go to someone every week to get support and treatment for my body, and feeling quite frustrated and also resentful that I have to spend that time and also the resources to do that. And actually, he was helping me to understand that actually the more support that we give our body, the better. And there's a lot of people who are really sick who spend probably 6,000 a month because they have really significant illnesses, and actually to spend a lot, 10% of that or whatever, actually to support my body is a good thing. So it's also been a slight mindset of a sort of new framework, and something I realized I'd slipped recently of like feeling like focusing on that I'm in pain and that I'm actually slipping. And why am I slipping? Because it's been 7 years. The body, I'm sure your audience know this, but after 7 years, every single cell in the body is different. So from when I had the accident to now, like I'm a whole new person. And why am I still going through this? And it's getting worse. Actually, it was just realizing that it's sometimes, from what's been my experience, it's like when things get really bad, that's actually time when the body actually comes forward to heal, and things and modalities and people come in your life that can hold space for you to heal. And that's actually been my experience. It's been kind of three months of sort of feeling like I'm in this sort of shadow tunnel, and also actually for the first time really starting to cry about the experience and actually what I've been through. And crying is obviously such a release for the body, and sort of the next layers of just letting go the charge and the memory, the muscle memory, and the sort of myofascial release. So it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, our cells remember. I always think at the times, especially when we're in hospital and we're out, when we're under anesthesia and they're cutting through the body and doing surgery and removing pieces. And
such a big thing.
It's a big thing that I don't think we always think about. Well, just because my very small part of my conscious awareness was subdued, the rest of the body feels those things.
Yeah.
And over time, with all the stuff that I've done, I've had many different waves of very intense, profound emotions come out through the body and leave. And then many times I'll feel worse for a little while. Maybe the symptoms exacerbate and then there'll be like a regression, but it truly is like the ebb and flow of the tides.
Yeah.
It's ever coming and ever changing.
And water remembers.
Yeah, I know. And more to remember. But it's been a beautiful process, really and truly. And I think I would just join with you in saying, it's now. Now. It's not about if 100,000 people hear this interview or 4. Like, this is ours, right? This is our moment in time. And yeah, there's no expectation on what happens after this other than sharing the moment, capturing, and putting it out with intention.
Absolutely.
That's it.
I mean, I think also when I meet people quite often who I'm lucky enough to work with or operate with, who operate at a very global level, and actually the people that I really respect who are doing really high purpose work, and when you have the privilege of being able to observe how they operate, and they're very present in whatever they do and how they show up in the world. And it's really, I think sometimes we can overcomplicate things, and also with all the biohacking luxuries, which I have some reservations about.
Great.
And obviously that's a whole world, which there's a very limited knowledge that I have, but it's, just there's so much when I have seen again and again, whether it's in a relationship with a loved one, just to be witnessed and seen, or whether you're working with your inner child from something that happened when you were little that was never resolved, or just being with someone or a friend or in an interview. It's always, you always get the most out of people when you just truly there and just hearing them and seeing them and just being present.
Yeah. What are your reservations about the biohacking? Give me. Now, I want to say for me, it's like, I don't love that word. I mean, I look at it, we're using innovations in technology to accentuate or complement human physiology and spirituality. And all that for me would be I'm going to open my toolbox and I'm going to use a tool, but it's me, right? I'm the wizard, right? And I'm just using this tool to come in and create another energetic dynamic within the space between us.
So I do, in terms of biohacking, I do not feel like I have enough meat in the bone for you and I to just go there and
it's a fascinating, I think intuitively, if you have something come up, I think it's valuable.
So I don't know enough about specific products, but I guess I more have a general reservation about, I'm sure there's stuff in the biohacking industry, and I don't know how big the biohacking industry is, but I imagine it's pretty decent. No?
I mean, I think biohacking is very niche. I think people, I would say anybody interested in feeling better and doing better and living better and expanding their capacity as a human being, some of those people are going to look to elements of technology to assist that. But I think it can all fit in this realm of like health and longevity and wellness. So I think it's massive. I see the lean in from people that would have never asked me, that go to the pub every night, that don't eat clean. They're like, do you think I should buy this red light? And I'm like, you should do some other things first, but here's what this red light does. So it's a way in for them because they're listening to something like, I shouldn't feel like this. And so they're drawn into the conversation through like what you could argue is like a bright, shiny thing, like the diamond ring. Like there's a convention and a story behind it. It does do something for health beyond, just sitting in front of like a little red diode. There is biological benefit. And there's so much more to the conversation to expansion and health.
But the only thing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because you would know so much more about this space than me, but in terms of the infrared, from what I understand, what I've been told from a doctor I really respect, which is, I think the infrared saunas, for example, that technology is thousands years old, from what I've been told. And with the infrared stuff, I feel like it's like a cake that they're remixing it and then turning it to a different, but actually that technology has been around for thousands of years.
Well, millions, it's the sun, right? But you can't there's nowhere I can sit in my home and get in a little portable infrared sauna, which is a spectrum of light or heat that's going in the body and it's generating internal core temperature, and my body's off-gassing environmental toxicants.
Right.
Like it's quite a piece of wizardry. It's like wizard science. So, and it's all how you use the tool. I do think energy behind the action is so important for me.
Intention.
Yeah, intentionality. Like what's behind this? Like what are we doing right now? How am I working with the body? What do I want to ask of it?
But I would also gently challenge you, which is I was with my lovely friend Dan Butner, who's from the Blue Zones, the pioneer of the Blue Zones.
Yes.
And his thing with all the different communities in different parts of the world that he spent time in, And actually the thing that he found, which was the common theme between all of them, is community.
Yeah.
And I think that's ultimately the health and longevity
100%.
you want to anchor in, which doesn't involve any money, though obviously it depends on your geographical landscape, how connected you can live and what that looks like.
I join with you in that. And I think that's a non-starter that has to be part of the special sauce for you to get magical outcomes in your health. And then in America, we're not in a blue zone. We're 100x our food supply, which all Americans, unfortunately, there's not education or awareness around what is clean food in the United States. So our food supply is
challenged.
Well, it's per person, I think it's 1.37 kilograms of glyphosate, which is a carcinogen, on our food. So if I think about, and it's always a thought experiment. I'm like, well, if I meet Americans where we're at, we need a little bit extra as far as like we have a physical body that we do need to honor the physics of the principle. So supporting drainage pathways and detoxification. I think I'm an optimist, but I'm very worried about the long-term implications of what's happening as far as like Parkinson's, autism, neurological conditions, and cancer, and especially in young women. So those things are rapidly accelerating, and not always like if you looked at a heat map of the world and you looked at Europe, or you looked at the blue zones and you looked at America, I mean, you could say it's an energetic thing too. And we can also say, well, these chemicals are in excess here. They're not necessarily here. So that's one thing that,
Does that come back to the gut health fundamentally of how you can support and protect your body by having a strong gut health? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean cellular health too, because a lot of these things, these environmental, be it mercury, be it glyphosate, they cross the blood-brain barrier, they impact cell metabolism, how much energy a cell could make. Surely they disrupt the gut microbiome. That's a huge part of it. That's Zach Bush talks a lot about that. He has a
well, the iron supplement, that's his supplement that he developed. I've actually recently started taking that, like changed my sleep and so helpful for my sleep, the iron intelligence. And then also the gut immunity one, which actually quite a few friends are also on. And it's about the cell connectivity and the cell communication. And they've had extraordinary results with autistic children who start speaking for the first time. Like it's really, I feel a lot better for it.
Yeah. Humic and fulvic acid, which is like an ancient technology. It's these ancient dissolved like plant compounds and volcanic acids. And,
really?
Yeah, that's what the supplement is.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's on, if you wanted to take it to a purely physical energetic, these compounds have this incredible potential for electron donorship. They have energy in them. So they're giving the body this extra energy to be able to deal with the environmental problem that the body is choosing to take in, whether knowingly or unknowingly.
I guess there's so much that our body is unknowingly dealing with, especially for those living in cities. I remember my meditation teacher was saying that the exposure that we have, I guess, at the electromagnetic field with Wi-Fi, for example, from 15, 20 years ago to now is so, I think he said it was something like 15,000 times in terms of X. And then not that I have any issue with 3G, 4G. I think it's also potentially not all good.
Well, it's and again, I even with that, and I agree with you, it's like we could easily go through the world right now and find so many things to be afraid of and create this world of fear. Like, look at how awful and how bad, and anything from the you could say electromagnetic smog, environmental toxicants, air quality, water quality. And I think that you do need to, it's polarity. You got to have that awareness about like what the physical body needs, and then what is the story behind all that, and where can I have agency?
Yeah. What can you do with what you have, and just try and control, like, for example, I always turn off my Wi-Fi when I go to bed, and I can feel it. I remember, because I travel a lot, but when I get home back to Beeson, I remember once I left my Wi-Fi on and I came home, and I guess because I'm very tuned in and I can really feel probably more than most, but I really felt it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, okay, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. We've had the house tested. So like this corner bedroom over here is like nothing.
No Wi-Fi?
I mean, even if the Wi-Fi is on, it's like that room, it's like for whatever the construction of the house is, whether the metal's in the wall, it's like, it's a dead zone.
Okay.
It's like there's no even radio frequency. For some reason, that corner room is like, it's like the safe, it's a protected safe room.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I wonder if you sleep better in that room than your other room?
I don't. And I've tested it every way to sideways. I find because I take a humic and fulvic acid every day, and I do take some good antioxidants. And then the things like the red light and the hydrogen, these are all selective antioxidants that are working in my system. I don't find switching off Wi-Fi impacts sleep. What I do, for me, what really impacts sleep is if I do a little work on my vagus nerve.
Like the tapping that we were doing just before.
The tapping, and I just have a little vagus stimulator. It's a little current that just sits on my nerve and it runs a little frequency pulse. And I've been testing it for 3 weeks, and it's like,
I mean, if you
consistently,
because for those who don't know, the vagus nerve is the biggest nerve in the body, and it runs down our neck all the way down. From training in reflexology, that's the one thing that I always used to. I don't do reflexology so much now, but it's the one thing that I would always go to just to allow people to drop, or if you have a session with someone who's supercharged and they just need to just calm down. And that's the easiest hack of how to, it's often very painful. And the same with the tapping that you and I were doing just before we started dropping in, of allowing the body to drop into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the state that you want to be in, which is a real state of stillness and being.
Why is working with the vagus nerve painful? What do you mean? You have some sort of a release technique in reflexology?
So most of us, because of the way that we live our lives, if you work with the vagus nerve through the feet, in terms of reflexology, so it's just underneath the ball of the foot.
Ooh.
You'll always be fine. It's often very painful, and you'll be able to the stuff. Anytime you find pain in the feet, it's just a reflection of imbalances in the body because of thousands and thousands year old sort of Chinese medicine of working with the body through the feet. Is super inspiring.
I love the vagus. I love that it means to wander. It wanders throughout the body and connects to all organs and organ systems.
Is that what it's?
I think the root of the word means to wander.
Oh wow, fascinating. I thank you for sharing.
Of course. Oh goodness, yeah, it's so amazing. The body's fascinating. What do you see? You know, we're in I don't know if we're in a new world. There's like this dawn of energetic awakening in some levels. Other people think the world is ending. It's a really interesting time on the planet. Do you see it in the work that you do? Have you seen any type of a shift in people over the last few years, over the last year?
I would say no. The thing that I have noticed, which is I'm being British, I have a connection to London, even though I'm not there all the time. But that energetically, and I hear it from so many people, that feels like it's shifted. There's so many people that are leaving London. But in terms of people's bodies, I find most of the time, 98% of the time, I'm working with something that I haven't worked with before. Because I don't know why we've been made up to be so complicated. People tend to have so much stuff, from grief to anger to pain to mother wounds to father wounds, in the myriad of different iterations that can look like, from all these different pains or injuries or anxiety or back pain or knee pain or glute pain or neurological things or immune. And so actually most of the time I'm working on stuff that I haven't worked on before. And I guess the sad reality, if you zoom out and look at collectively, is that we are more sick than we've ever been. I don't have the answer, I've got some sort of ideas. But so I guess, and I think there's so much stimulation now because of the capacity that we can operate at and fire on all cylinders with no shut off, and the social media game, if you want to be in that field and play, it's a lot. It's a lot for the body to have to process. If you think of where we used to have been with being in a field around a fire. And I think also and it's kind of fascinating when you look at, so biologically, and it's very much the work that I do where I sit at the level point between where biology and physiology occurs. And the biology of our body will always, through the psychosocial experience of what it is to be a human, we do pick up traumas and things like that, but they can be stored in the body. But whilst the biology will always work to return to its original design, what's happened is most of the cultures of how we live today, we've lost these daily rituals, which were our pathways to heal, to allow the trauma to go. So it's rituals, things like fireside song, dancing, ceremony, and the like. And so now what's happened is you're dealing with this. It's not just trauma that's in this lifetime, but it's generational trauma that I'll pick up a lot in sessions of money wounds or stories that children were born with that didn't belong to them, like we don't need a man, and none of the mother, if you look at the mother line, the blood lineage, none of them have had husbands, they've all been the breadwinners. And so it's kind of super fascinating when you get to work with these different wounds and traumas that are from before. So yeah, that's something that's super interesting to me.
Yeah. I'd be fascinated to hear your opinion. Now you're working essentially like energetically and in silence. Have you done a lot of like cognitive behavioral therapy or talk therapy in which you get to voice the pains that you're experiencing and feeling? Where do you think those two different sides of the therapeutic element complement each other, or do you not think we necessarily need to speak out the trauma in the words?
So I've done myself a ton of different therapies. I've done talking therapy and then I've done body therapy. In my own experience, talking therapy is great and absolutely has its time and its place, but there's certain therapy like somatic therapy or body work or energy work, which is sort of the essence of what I do, which is it's something that I'm accessing stuff that you can't. It's not something that can really be accessed through the spoken word because it's so deep in the different layers within the energy matrix of the body that I'm lucky enough to be able to drop into and to see in very vivid colors and structures. And so it's a completely different modality and it's a completely different skill set. And also the thing that I found in the same way, it's rather like we're made up of this. Obviously we have a physical body, but fundamentally all of our cells, it's all space.
Yes.
99.999% is space. So if you look at it more from a sort of practical thing, which is Western medicine, which I totally honor, it works from the body, from the skin, from the touch. Whereas from energy medicine, if you approach the body from a space of working from the portal, which is the 99.9%, you have so much more of an opportunity to help the body to heal. And so I think this is how I've been able to work with people and have these miraculous, extraordinary results with people that no one else has been able to help, or they've had years and years of this pain and it's just wrapped in one session or max back pain and then it's gone. And so I think it's just a very different thing. And it's also, again, just about working with the limitations of where you are and what you need. And I'm sure at some point I'll go back to talking therapy. But yeah, it's just a different modality that for me has a very different depth.
Yeah, beautifully said. I love the 99.9% space and going in through a different portal because we're these dense meat suits that hold a lot of secrets. And I also think about the idea of how much runs on the subconscious.
Yeah.
That we're not, it's such a fraction of our awareness that is conscious witnessing. I think it's like 65 bits a second versus thousands and thousands of bits of information that the subconscious is taking in and creating the decision-making process.
But I would also challenge you on that, which is for me, in my experience, you can reprogram the mind and you can build neural pathways every day. I always love in terms of there's no need to reinvent the wheel. So if you find someone who's brilliant, so I was with a really big founder a couple of nights ago, and he's had this, and he built multi-billion-dollar company, and he had this mantra, which I asked him to share with me, which he's had since he was a child, and it was lucky things happen to me, and I feel really lucky, but really connect to that feeling when you say it. And it's something he's said every day since he's a child. And I very much live my life on a mantra of deep gratitude and feeling unbelievably humble and blessed for the life that I live and feeling so much abundance and opportunity. And it rather like what we were talking about before, which is your thoughts create your reality and the filter of how you see the world, rather like you and I in this same space will have a completely different experience of a shared experience. But actually you can, and I've been doing it for sort of almost over 10 years of every morning, because in terms of accessing the subconscious and getting things into the computer and controls, rather like that's the manifesting thing that everyone's kind of going for. But when the mind is half asleep or half awake, first thing and last thing, it's easiest ways to reprogram the mind, to build these new neural pathways, to change our subconscious, and then life just starts to pivot and what we give out comes back, which you know.
Yeah, fun. Yeah, I'm thinking about the different states of the brain, the different wavelengths,
Yeah.
from delta to theta to alpha to beta to gamma. And it's just so funny. The way I look at it a lot of times, it's like what I know is like these are the brainwave predominant states that allow reprogramming to happen. Like some people, like Tony Robbins, is going to try to get you in a certain state. And so where his NLP will be more effective after a weekend event. And everybody just works in such different ways.
Yeah.
It's really wild.
Yeah. But I think the neurolinguistic programming or mainstream manifesting as it's widely known now, I can only speak from my experience, but it's so fundamental to how I live my life. And there are so many very tangible, very big things that I have called in, also smaller things. It's not quite so important to me, but still from little to big, whatever it is I'm focusing on with whatever project that I'm doing. And there's a lot of big things I've been able to lift because it's like you ground yourself and it's like you're constant. It's like going to the gym and creating. And it's always, I always think the mind in terms of meditation, it's like the mind is like a runway. And it's like, is your runway like a London Heathrow, one of the biggest airports in the world, where the biggest jumbo jet can land every 90 seconds and it doesn't shake? And that's your all versus being a runway, which is like an African bush runway, which the biggest airplane in the world will land and it will be a complete shit show. So it's like you can constantly recondition and refine your mind. And I think this was actually really super fascinating for me because when I reflected back, so my 29th year was like such a painful talk about a phoenix rising from the ashes and then sort of a death and rebirth. But leading into that, I had a breakup which ended and I was so broken and shattered, and it was just I just felt so dishonored, and it was just a really painful experience. And then meditation carried me through that breakup, just meditating through the pain. And I had sort of 6 months of really refining my mind. And then it was just as I was getting back on my feet. And then I had this experience of just being in this fundamentally just deep trauma with this accident experience. And actually it was like from reflecting, like life had given me 6 months to mentally prepare for that. And that's why when it happened, I made a promise to myself that it wouldn't define me, it wouldn't be my identity, it would just be part of the tapestry of life. And I just kind of continued on that journey.
Yeah, it's profound. That's going to help somebody.
I hope so.
It was peak. I felt it. I was like, oh, somebody's going to hear this moment and really, pull some magic from there. So in your world of working as a healer and an energetic healer, like where do people find you? Where do they go learn more about your work or your presence? Are you a social media online person?
I am social media, so it's on Pearly Way of Life on Instagram. I also
Can you spell that?
A Pearly Way of Life, so pearly like a pearl that's in an oyster in the sea.
Yes.
Pearly with a Y, way of life, and it's got a dot, way of life with a dot. It'll be in the show notes.
Yes, it will.
And then through there, I have a website which is called mandalay.org. So it's MANDERLEY. And there you can see different things of how I work and just see if it connects and resonates with you. And then I also have mandalayconcierge.org, where I work more with corporations more on a monthly basis and people who it's much easier for them to access my time because it's a little bit limited sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm working more with families or individuals sort of more collectively looking after their health and well-being, and just tuning in, being available to tune in if they're sort of flying around the world or they want me to look after their whole family.
Amazing.
Wonderful.
What a great time. Do you want to manifest something? Do we want to call something in?
I think my prayer whenever I do podcast interviews, it's always grounded in the essence of so much of what I do, which is higher purpose, which is about giving back and serving, and hoping that the message that's come through our words touches people and enables people and communities in a meaningful way. Because I think when you light someone up and you help someone to heal, they show up with their families and their communities and the teams around them that can really thrive and really help people in a meaningful way. So.
Yeah, beautiful. Let's do that. So it's the Beautifully Broken podcast. So I have to ask you, and we've talked about it a little bit at the top of the show, but what does it mean to you to be beautifully broken?
it's deeply humbling. Yeah, deeply humbling, I would say. Sprinkled with gratitude and a lot of humor, and then just keep showing up.
And if you had a magic wand and you can turn in all the television studios and people's phones, they're going to tune right in to Channel Pearly. At this time in the world, what would you say to everybody if you just had a minute?
I would say find gratitude in as many moments as you can. And first thing when you start the morning and you open up your eyes, just even if it's one thing, just focus on one thing that you're grateful for. And before you go to bed, just think of one good thing that's happened that day. And it's when you start to look for those one things, then it changes your world slowly, slowly.
Yeah. Awesome. Rinse, repeat, keep doing that. Friends, we're here on the Beautifully Broken podcast. What a treat.
Thank you.
We'll link everything so you can find and follow Pearly online. Till next time.
Thank you. What a pleasure.